So my name is Veronica Watson. I'm the Indiana Director for Patronicity. I've been put in charge of coordinating this webinar and a couple others that'll be coming up in July and August. So I want to take a minute to introduce myself and then help walk you guys through the system and then also introduce our speakers. So this is the first of 3 webinars that we'll be hosting this summer. And for this first one, we have decided to focus on creating places. So Rob, if you can go to the next slide. Yeah, so I want to give a very quick introduction to our 3 speakers. They'll be able to describe their positions and their work a lot better than I will be. But I just wanted to let everyone know who's on the line. And then before I hand over control to Rob and to our 2 project creators, I'm going to give everyone an overview of Creating Places. That's the funding program that our 2 project creators participated in. I feel like it's going to be helpful if you have a background of the program that they were participating in as they were creating and implementing their awesome campaigns and their projects. So after I do that quick overview, we're going to have hopefully about a 20-minute discussion between Rob and our project creators, followed by, I'm hoping for another 15 or 20 minutes of discussion with questions from you guys. So again, please feel free to add some questions to the side panel. It's on the right. There's a little graphic that looks kind of like a comment box, bubble. Click on that and you can add anything to there. I'll keep an eye on that and make sure that those questions get addressed at the end of this. All right, so our speakers today, first, or at least the person that will be leading the discussion that we get to will be Rob St. Mary. He's my wonderful colleague at Patronicity. He's in charge of our outreach, and his background is in radio. So I'm pretty excited that he'll be able to take charge of the conversation with Alex and Shelley. Alex was an AmeriCorps Vista. He is now an assistant planner with the city of Gary, and he ran a campaign early last year. And then we have Shelley Myers, who is a teacher from Wabash, Indiana. She ran a campaign earlier this year, and you'll see their campaigns are pretty different. So I'm excited for the discussion that they have. All right, so Creating Places, this is the funding program that both Alex and Shelley participated in. This is very similar to some of the programs that Patronicity, very similar to what we do in our other states. To go over it quickly, this is a program that's meant to support public spaces, parks, plazas, alleyways, downtown main streets, bike trails, anything that a community is interested in their public space. That's the type of project that we are hoping to support through Creating Places, as well as our other state programs. Our particular program is open for municipalities, 501c3 and 501c4 organizations. We offer funding of between $5,000 and $50,000 as a match, and it's supposed to be matching a crowdfunding campaign. So the idea is that you run a campaign for between $5,000 and $50,000 on patronicity.com, and if you're successful, you'll receive a matching grant from the Indiana Housing and Community Development Authority here in Indiana. And this is a program that goes pretty quickly. Projects need to be done within 12 months of receiving the funding from IHCDA. So most of our projects that we're working with, once they get to the application phase, are pretty shovel ready. In the last nearly 2 years, we're in our second round of funding now. Got about $1.5 million that we've granted out already, and another $500,000 that we're looking to grant out. If you're in Indiana and you're interested, make sure you contact me about that. I just wanted to quickly kind of give everyone an overview of some of the projects that we have supported here in Indiana. These are all projects that have applied, and quite a few of them now have been implemented. And actually, the one in the bottom right corner is Alex's project. He has got a couple other photos I think he'll be sharing with you guys, but I just wanted to give everyone kind of an overview of the wide variety of projects that we support through Creating Places, as well as through our other state programs in Michigan, Massachusetts, and more states to come. So I believe that is it. All right, so I'm going to unmute Alex and let Alex go ahead and explain his wonderful project from Gary, Indiana. Alex, are you okay to talk?
All right, thank you so much. So my name's Alex Kerner, and I worked on this project called the Gary Preservation Tours. So back in the fall of like 2016, we were kind of thinking of different ways to do historic preservation initiatives in downtown Gary. Downtown Gary has gone through quite a bit of neglect and blight for the last couple decades, and so a lot of our historic buildings are sitting vacant. And so we wanted to do something that would kind of start activating those spaces in a way and kind of get people thinking outside of the box of what we could be doing with some of these buildings, especially since there were some other projects going on downtown around the same time that were focusing heavily on these historic buildings. So we figured this would be a great way to get people involved in spreading the word about what these historic buildings are and what we could potentially do with them in the future. And so we got a lot of inspiration from Open House Chicago, for anyone that is familiar. That happens every year in October. And so we ended up doing, I'm going to jump ahead to when we actually did the tour, but we ended up doing 2 tour dates for guided tours, and then we had 1 open house date. So a total of 3 different dates. And really the big goals here were to bring foot traffic to downtown, alter negative perceptions, show the city through a historic lens, and maybe get some of the citizens and some of the surrounding communities to start thinking of ways to use adaptive reuse in these historic buildings downtown. So we had the idea. Now we needed to find the funding because Gary didn't have the financial situation to kind of give us the money. So we needed to get a grant. So we were looking around and we came across the Creating Places grant that Veronica was explaining to everyone. And we said, okay, well, this might work. So if you want to go to the next slide now. So we campaigned for a little less than 30 days in February of 2017 to March of 2017. And our goal was to raise $7,500. And we actually got to that goal with 5 days to spare left on our campaign. So we ended up raising $9,050 with 94 different individual donors for the most part. We only had, I think, 3 or 4 businesses give decent sized checks. So a lot of that money came from individual donors, which was exciting. I'm not going to lie, this wasn't the easiest thing in the world to do. Campaigns are a lot of work and they are hard, but the reward that you could get from it, at least that we saw, was amazing. So really the campaign helped put the seed in people's brain about this tour and really made them feel invested in the tours and the buildings in downtown from the very, very infancy of this project. We did the campaign, like I said, in February of 2017, and the tours actually the first tour started at the end of May. So in between that time frame, because we did the campaign that people gave their own money for, between after the campaign was done to the actual first tour, we couldn't stop getting calls from people still asking, oh, what's going on with this? We heard that you guys were successful with the campaign. What's the next steps? Like, when can we get involved? And so if you're doing any sort of activity or placemaking that really needs community buy-in and really needs the community to be supportive, that was why this campaign was so beneficial to us. Now, to do the campaign, a lot of the things that we focused on were we made a lot of calls, a lot of calls. We called a bunch of the churches in the area. Churches are a big part of Gary, Indiana. We also called a lot of businesses that we knew had funded other projects before. And our big pitch the whole time was, we really, really would like your money, but if you could just spread the word for us, that's good enough for us. And that seemed to work because we didn't get money from a lot of the people that we were asking specifically, but then they would go and spread the word. And then, or they would tell us, well, go and try these people or go and try this organization. And we'd get a lot of good responses that way. So really spreading the word was essential and a good reason why this campaign worked so well for our project, because spreading the word and getting people interested was the whole idea of the project, is to get people interested in the historic buildings. We also relied heavily on local media. We had quite a bit of media in the Northwest Indiana region that was interested from the very beginning and wrote about the project from when we first started the crowd campaign to the end of the crowd campaign, all the way through the tours. We also are lucky enough to be close enough to the Chicago market that we got quite a bit of those journalistic organizations that wrote about us, and so that was exciting. And then social media was a big part. We had about 1,000 followers between Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and we really pushed everything on there. We made Facebook events. Most of our big information about the tours went through Facebook. So yeah, that was really helpful. But I'm sure I missed something. That was a quick overview. So if there are any questions, I'm sure we'll be taking questions at the end and talking more about it. But that's pretty much all I have for you guys at the moment.
Thanks, Alex. I'm going to go ahead and put you on mute. That was an awesome explanation. I think a great overview. I know I've already got questions based on that, so hopefully everyone else does as well. Like I said, feel free to add those on the right-hand side. But no, that was a great start to the conversation. So now, Shelly. All right, I think I've got this mute thing down so far. So, Shelly, I'm going to go ahead and let you take over to discuss your project in Wabash.
Okay, great. Thank you. So let me start this by saying that I am a nobody when it comes to my community. I am a teacher. I'm a mom. That's about it. I have never fundraised before in my entire life other than selling like pies at school. That's it. So this project, when it first started, kind of started as I have a son who uses a walker to get around. He has super tight muscles in his legs. He doesn't get around like all other kids. There was another little boy in his class at the time who was in a wheelchair, and I saw a video about a playground out in Portland, Oregon that's an inclusive playground called Harper's Playground, and I thought, how as a mother of a special needs child have I never even heard of inclusive playgrounds? So I decided I was going to call the other mom of the little boy in my son's class, and I called her and I said, I'm sending you this video, watch it because we're doing this in Wabash. And it all just sort of snowballed from there. It was amazing. The community was going through a process at the time to try to become what they call a stellar community in the state of Indiana. And the mayor agreed to put the inclusive playground as a part of that project, and we were awarded that designation. And so that got us a little bit of our initial funding. The project, all said and done, cost $1.65 million. So we were, again, I've never fundraised in my life, let alone for $1.65 million. So we were getting a little bit of a head start from the Stellar program. We ended up with about $400,000 from that. So really what we had to figure out is how are we going to sell this to the community? How are we going to get people to buy into that? And you'll see the logo on the screen there in front of you, as well as the design of the playground. We decided that we need people to understand that, number one, this is not a project for handicapped kids. And number two, it doesn't matter how old you are or what your abilities are. The whole point is it's not just a playground. You know, we're giving kids the ability to play together, to make these friendships they would have never been able to make before. And ultimately, it's going to change the culture in this community. Kids are going to see each other for who they are, not what they can do. So we started off on our fundraising efforts, and then we actually learned about Patronicity because there were two other groups in Wabash. Our local YMCA built an indoor playground, and then we have a walking trail along the river, bike trail, whatever, and they built an outdoor pavilion space near that, and Patronicity was a part of that project. So that's how we even found out about Patronicity, and decided that it's a great way to get the community involved. Most of our funding initially came from the Stellar program. The city matched it. That got our initial $400,000. And then to get to our 1.55 that we needed to start Patronicity, we were just pounding the pavement. We were talking to foundations. We were talking to businesses. We were talking to individuals, but mostly people who we knew had the means to make larger donations. Our largest individual donation was $300,000. We had a couple of great, $10,000, $25,000, $50,000 donations. That's how we got to the point where we were ready for Patronicity. Um, but we just had a message that people were willing to listen to. They understood what it is that we were trying to do. We weren't just trying to build another playground in our community. We were trying to change the community with the playground that we're building. So we opted for the $50,000 matching goal. And I'm telling you, we were terrified because the other people that had done this in Wabash, we were pretty sure had some people who had said, if you don't get it, we'll get you over the hump. We didn't have that. We were literally counting on anybody to make any kind of donation to get us to that $50,000. And so in our conversations and how long to do, we decided that we were gonna kind of target our campaign as 50K in 50 days. And we created a plan. Our whole committee had jobs. We designated well. That's a really, really important part, I think, in the planning of this is one person can't do it all. You've got to have people who know what is expected of them. They need their task list, and everybody's got to be on board to do things on time and appropriately. So we planned on this 50K in 50 days. We had a plan. We drove this primarily through social media. Facebook was our target audience. Other than our local newspapers and radios were really good about kind of keeping it alive in people's minds as well. And we also had connections through our local Chamber of Commerce that they got a weekly email blast of information. Here's where we are right now. Here are the events that we have coming up. Make sure you put this on your calendar. So the big things that we think really, really worked the best for us was that we kept it alive. We had something every single week. Every Monday during the campaign, we had what we called a Make a Difference Monday, where we had a local restaurant who had agreed to donate a portion of their proceeds to our campaign. So we could go on Facebook, don't cook tonight, go to this pizza place, or go eat here, or go for ice cream at this place, and we will get a portion of the proceeds. And people who didn't really have the money to make a donation on their own could go there and they could eat, and they still felt like they were helping us out. So that was a really, really great way to do it. We made sure to recognize people who had donated every week. We call it Thankful Tuesdays. And we made a list on social media and tagged everybody who had donated. And then every Wednesday, I or myself and my son made a video update and told everybody, here's where we are in our funding. Here's what's been going on. Here's what's coming up. We did a contest as a part of that every week. We did like who could donate from the farthest away, and that person got like a line on our donor wall, or they could, tag a famous person and see if we could get some kind of recognition from them, which we never did, but it was worth a shot. And so we just, we tried to keep people active in it by doing those weekly contests. On Thursdays, we had contacted people ahead of time. We did one full day of filming, and we went around to different people who had agreed to take part in our trivia contest. And so we released those trivia videos, which was kind of fun because, we asked questions like, what number on the keyboard has a dollar sign, to somebody who works as a cashier. And they were like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I don't know this. And they got it wrong. And if they got it wrong, they had to draw a dollar amount from our little bag that they were going to donate to the project. They all agreed ahead of time. They knew that they were going to end up having to donate. And most of them ended up donating more than what they drew out of our bag. The most that they would have had to have donated was $50. So that was a really, really fun way. We got like our sheriff's candidates involved. We got the mayor and the people at City Hall. We got the police chief, fire chief, just, people who have connections, and then local business people as well. They have connections outside of maybe our group and the people that we knew. And then the last thing that we did on social media was Say Why Saturdays. We had some people throughout the community, both with special needs children and without. We had them submit a picture and a statement as to why it is that they wanted this playground to happen. We had them say why they felt like an inclusive playground was going to be a good thing in Wabash. We also met every single week. I mean, like Alex said, it was a harrowing time. I mean, we were all very busy, and we, at the end, actually took a little vacation, a few of us on the committee together, to celebrate because it was such a successful campaign and it was so much fun. You'll see on the slide that we had 221 total donors. We did reach our $50,000 with a couple of days to spare, and even then got a little bit over. But if I were to say one really important thing, it would be that keep it alive in people's minds, keep them aware of what's going on, and make people feel important no matter how much they can donate.
All right. Dang, wise words. I need to like print those down somewhere and hand out to all my projects.
Oh,
All right, that was awesome, both of you. Thank you for to both Shelly and Alex for giving those overviews. I've now unmuted Alex and Mr. Rob St. Mary, who I'm going to let take over the conversation. Rob, it's all yours.
Well, thank you, Veronica, and thank you everyone for joining us today. And Alex and Shelly, I have to say, when I hear stories like this, it really makes me happy to hear the value of community, because ultimately that's really what it is about. At least that's the way I see what we do at Patronicity, is connecting community to improve community. And, we've found, as you were saying, Shelly, that, trying to get support, not only from the folks down the street, but, maybe folks grew up in that town, but now they live somewhere else. Or maybe it's just a really cool project and they want to be part of it. And that's the great thing that I think the platform allows people to do, is to reach beyond that. So to talk about starting up your campaigns, you talked about it a little bit, but I thought I would start with Alex first. And if you think back to it, Alex, when you first heard about Creating Places, the crowd granting program in Indiana with the Indiana Housing and Community Development Authority, what was it when you read it that you said, I think this might work for what we're trying to do?
So that's a good question, and I've been thinking about that one a little bit. And we actually were, ICDA, Indiana Housing and Community Development Authority, had a representative that came up to us and told us that there was this grant, because we were actually looking for another project for a grant. And so she's like, well, maybe look at this, see if this fits. And so we looked at the grant and we were like, well, this really doesn't fit that project, but it may fit this other project. And so we had a couple questions when it first started, though, because there wasn't really too many events that they had done. And so we had called Veronica and just asked, and we were like, hey, would this work? And she said, yeah, we think this might work. We'd have to go and make sure ICTA is all on board with it and stuff. And then we'll go from there. And ended up working out really well. The thing that really we liked about it was most of the grants that we were looking at made you put a match up as the city. Well, being in the city of Gary, we didn't have the funds to put a match up. So this one provided us with an opportunity to at least raise our own match, or raise the funds through Patronicity. So that was really what made us sold and be like, all right, we got to do this one. That's going to be what it will have to work. So yeah.
All right. Well, Shelly, much the same to you. I mean, you had done such an amazing job to this point. And, when you talk about that budget, it seems like it was a really big haul to get those folks on board to build something so wonderful as you're working on. What was it when you heard about the Creating Places program and go, this may be the way to go? Because as you were saying, you had people that had already come in at tens of thousands of dollars, and now this program was going to get you people that were going to come in at $10 or $100.
And really, that was the key. We hadn't really found an appropriate way to reach out to the people who didn't have as much to give, And so when the other two projects went through successfully, we thought, okay, people already kind of have an awareness of what Patronicity is, how it works. And so now this is our chance. This is our way to reach out to some of those smaller donors. And we did get, I think the biggest donation we got through Patronicity was $5,000. But I mean, we got lots and lots of small donations. And that was, like I said, everybody was able to feel important. And that's what we really wanted.
One thing that I think about is just to, as Veronica said, a little bit about my former life. I was in radio, commercial, and in public radio. And, public radio is often known for those pledge drives. You give $60, you get a tote bag or a mug or something like that. I was just wondering, for the both of you, when it came into this process, Patronicity and crowdfunding in a way has really only, crowdfunding has only really been around, at least in the current form, maybe like the last 10 years or so. But when people look at sort of history, a lot of people may not know that the base that the Statue of Liberty is on was crowdfunded. in that back in the late 1800s, they said, hey, everyone send in a little bit of money and we'll get this thing built and put up in the harbor. And it took a few years, but it happened. It seems this idea of coming forward and having a community platform like this, what was, your concerns when you first came in terms of how to be able to navigate that process? How easy was it for you to navigate that process and to be able to create a project, a campaign to go out to share with the community?
The process, when we first started, we were a little nervous because me and my coworker at the time, we both had not done any sort of crowdfunding at all. So we were like, oh no, what are we gonna do? How do you even crowdfund? But Patronicity gave us some guides, Veronica did, and really we followed those guides to a T, and they worked really well, honestly. And also when we had any moments where we were a little nervous or whatever, we would contact Veronica, and she always kind of held our hands and kind of pushed us past the edge. She'd check in every week to see how we were doing. And so honestly, the hardest part about doing the crowdfund at the beginning, when we didn't really know what it was doing, was just kind of coming up with a plan. Shelley kind of hit on this point when she was talking earlier, but really figuring out all the tasks that you have to do and dividing them up and then making sure that they're done on time was the best way for us to accomplish that.
Yeah, Shelley, I was going to ask about that. I mean, for you, starting it with Patronicity, putting it up there, and then going, right, okay, we're going to hit the start button, we're going out, and we're going to do this. How was that process leading up to the starting gate for you?
Alex said it first. Veronica did a really good job of making sure that we knew what we were doing, making sure that we had everything in line. If we had any questions, she was always there. So that was really super helpful. And then, there were people who gave who didn't expect anything in return, obviously. But one of the nice things about Patronicity is, you give and you get. So even though I might only get a T-shirt for giving $50, and what's nice in our situation is we had playground pieces that could be named. You get your name on the donor wall, get your name on the swings or whatever if you gave at certain levels. So that enticed people, I think, to maybe go up from where they would have just so they could say get on the donor wall.
Now, Shelley, it's funny you said when you started off, the most fundraising you had done before this was bake sales.
Right.
How do you compare the bakes? How do you compare, creating places in Patronicity crowdfunding to bake sales? Is there a similarity? Is there something someone who's done a bake sale can learn?
I mean, I think they all require planning for sure. If you've ever been involved in any kind of fundraising at all, church, school, whatever, they require the planning and they require having people who are actually going to step up and help. And that was the biggest thing for us. If I had started this and tried to do it on my own, I would be crying in a corner because we would not have been successful.
As for yourself, Alex, how do you have you had any bake sale experience?
Besides working at some of my local shops, not really. We didn't really have much experience, and we really kind of learned on the fly. And we honestly got a lot of help from different organizations. So when we called a couple different businesses that had donated to other campaigns, we sat there and we were like, this is our first campaign. We just really we would like this to be successful, and we would talk to them all about the preservation tour and our goals with that. And they would usually give us pointers. They were very, very nice and receptive. And so just being upfront and honest with people a lot of the times for us worked really, really well.
I would echo that as well. Every time we spoke to someone, we said, here's who we are. We're nobodies. We're just people who are trying to do something that we feel is necessary for this community. And same thing. I mean, we would have people who would sit down with us and say, okay, have you gone here? Have you applied for this grant? Have you talked to this foundation? And some people even made us a list, go to this person, and this person. So those of you out there who are thinking about doing this, if you have not already reached out to people in your community who do have those connections, start with your mayor's office or chamber of commerce and go from there. You'll be surprised how many people I think will step up and help.
And I do just want to add one thing to that. We actually experienced a problem with our campaign. So we were fundraising at the same exact time that the mayor was fundraising for one of her big projects. So it was kind of like we weren't competing because we were both wanting each other to win, but we were kind of competing because we don't have as many pools to choose from in the city of Gary, Indiana. So, um, if I have any advice for anyone that's going forward and thinking about doing one of these campaigns, it would be to talk to your community members around before you decide to do this, and make sure there aren't any other big campaigns going, because that will kind of make it a little bit harder to maybe convince some people to give you some money.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. Both of you discussed the value of community. You mean, obviously, you're both doing a community project, so that's kind of a no-brainer. But the idea that I don't think most people go around most days and go, "Gee, who can I ask for money today?" It just doesn't seem to be a normal thing that you're thinking about. Um, so, was that reaction when you did go out and you started? I mean, maybe you were a little nervous when you started. Were you a little nervous to go out and ask folks? And then what did you find? Did you find that people were much more amenable and much more interested in getting involved than you thought?
I'll go first. We were very nervous, and people were actually pretty receptive. We at first, so Gary has a history of sometimes promising a little too much and then not being able to fulfill their promises. So sometimes we would go up to a couple churches, for example, we would go to and ask for their help or their donations. And they would kind of look at us a little bit skeptically and be like, "Are you actually going to complete this project, or are you just kind of talking to us and wasting our time right now?" So the nice part about doing this campaign that helped us for the actual tour was, like, once we convinced them that we were able to raise money like we did, they were much more enthusiastic about the project and willing to come forward and be like, "All right, how can we help? How can we be a part of your tours? How can we do this? How can we do that?" So again, I've said it a couple times in a couple different ways, but just doing these campaigns really, really helped um, give your project a little bit more of a leg up against some other projects that maybe didn't have crowdfunding.
And I'm a teacher, obviously by trade, and I talk to juniors and seniors all day long. So I'm not I'm not nervous talking to people ever. Um, but our very first presentation, we sat down and I asked a local business for $500,000. Didn't get it. Never thought I would sit and ask someone for $500,000 in my life. But then, I decided at that point that if I can sit and ask somebody for $500,000, I can ask anybody for anything. And I actually talked to the family that built Harper's Playground, the video that I saw at the very beginning. And his name is Cody Goldberg, and he gave me some really interesting advice. He said, there's always a way to yes. It might be a little more difficult, but there's always a way to get to yes. And I thought, you know what? He's right. I mean, Alex said it. There were a lot of people who didn't understand what we were doing. They saw that $1.65 million price tag and thought, okay, I'll give when I know it's actually going to happen. Fortunately, there were enough people who thought this needs to happen that they stepped in early, and they gave us that foundation to go to people then and say, okay, you know what? We've got $1 million. We are almost there. We just need to get to the end. And other people were going, okay, now's the time. Now is when I'm willing to get involved.
Now, Shelley, I was thinking, as you were going through the process with Patronicity, running the campaign and all of that, what was something that happened or you learned that maybe you didn't expect?
Oh gosh. As far as learning, I don't know that there was really anything that we didn't expect. But as far as the learning goes, as far as the process and learning goes, one thing that we were not aware of, or at least I wasn't when we first started, is that not all donations have to come in through the website. And so we were having people who, they had heard that we were close to the end. The community foundation in our local community was our fiscal sponsor. And so they were receiving money also. And so when it didn't look like we were doing very well online, we would get our report from the community foundation and see that we had made, another $3,000 or $4,000 this week. And so, I remember talking to Veronica at one point in an email, and she said, "Oh no, you can count those, plug those in." And I think I did a little squeal and cheer and said, "Yay!" Because I guess that was I didn't know how that process worked, and we figured that out midway.
Excellent. Alex, as for yourself, was there anything that that you learned or something that was maybe fortuitous you didn't expect?
Um, so I kind of already mentioned the fact that don't try to do campaigns while other campaigns in your community are going on. That was something that we learned the hard way, but we still were successful, so it was okay. Um, but really, to be quite honest, not too much. I mean, Veronica gave us the packet and she kind of ran through everything with us. And really, that was pretty comprehensive and really gave us a good idea of what to expect going into it. Now, I will say I'm not the greatest at doing public speaking. Like Shelly was talking about how she can just kind of talk in front of a group of people. And I'm not like that. So it was kind of a learning curve about how to handle myself in these situations. And so that was definitely a learning curve. But I think it definitely bettered me in the long run because even still to this day, I feel a lot more comfortable going out and talking to people and asking people for something that maybe I wouldn't have asked for before. But I'm like, well, I've asked people for money before, so I probably can ask for this.
You had mentioned some great tips, making sure you're coordinating with other fundraising campaigns that are taking place, making sure you look at that schedule, making sure you plan in advance, line up the people who are going to help you. If you were going to give a tip, and I'll start with you, Alex, to folks going out in the community and saying, yeah, I'm going to get in touch with Veronica. We're going to do this creating places thing in my town on a project we have. What is a tip or a couple of good tips you have that maybe you haven't mentioned so far, or just want to really hammer down for folks who are on the call today?
So one of the things that I sort of have already mentioned but haven't gone into deep detail with is the social media aspect. We had a lot of great responses off of social media, especially because what we're doing is historic buildings. So we found great ways to make social media not just constantly asking for money and constantly reminding people that we were doing the tour. I mean, doing the fundraising. We used the online platform and the social media a lot for just getting information out about these buildings. So we would take really nice pictures of some of these historic buildings, and then go to the local libraries and find out all the information and put them on there. So that people were actually reading the history information about these buildings. And that really actually sold a lot of people. They felt that we weren't just asking for money and we weren't just trying to do this social media campaign for that. They also felt like, hey, these people kind of are interested in what they're actually trying to fundraise for, and maybe I should be interested in it too. We got a lot of really great comments on there. We got a lot of good interactions, and it also led to a lot of donations. There was one time one of our tweets, it got retweeted by Curbed Chicago, which, for those who aren't familiar with Curbed, they are a urban / architecture sort of news organization, and it got retweeted. And just from that one retweet, we got about 3 or 4 donations in that hour, and it was only like a Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. and we got 4 or 5 donations just then, and one of the weirdest hours. So social media.
Shelly, as for you, you did mention a few tips, but just wondering if there's anything else you either want to reiterate or something you may have forgotten in terms of tips for those who might be similarly inclined to use Patronicity or creating places.
Definitely keep it alive. Those 5 times a week posts on Facebook for us, and it was consistent. It was always Make a Difference Monday. It was always Trivia Thursday, and so people got to looking for those things. The videos that I would make on Wednesdays, I mean, the first few videos got 5,000 or 6,000 views. I'm thinking, geez, I can't believe there are that many people that are interested in watching this. But you watch it, people share it, and ask them to share it. Some people think, oh, that's fun, and they don't think to share it. Ask them to share it. Ask the community to do things for you to make your job a little bit easier. So keep it alive in people's minds. Stay consistent, and give people different ways to get involved than to just send in a check. Give them the opportunity to go into a restaurant if you can, if your community will support that, or find ways in your community that they can help support other than just going online and making that donation. And the only other thing would be, and Veronica told us this, and Alex, I'd be interested to see if you noticed the same thing. Expect a lull kind of midway. Veronica had told us, your first few days or a week or so will be really, really busy, lots of donations, and then you may not see much, and then it will pick up again at the end. And that was 100% true for us. So we didn't panic too much in the middle because Veronica had kind of forewarned us that that's what we needed to expect, but that did happen.
Excellent. Well, if anyone has any questions, they can type them into the box on the right there. I have one left here that I actually wanted to ask is Shelley, and then we'll go to Alex too. Where are you in process on your project? So people may like to know, maybe they can come visit, come check it out.
Yeah, absolutely. I have learned a lot about what it takes to get permits and the whole construction and contract process. We have finally gotten to the point where the contractor has released fencing to go up around the site, and we should see dirt moving within the next month or so, with a grand opening this fall.
Excellent. Now, Alex, I know that you ran, as you said, several tours. Is it my understanding there may be an update?
There is, yeah. So last year we ran those tours and we were fairly successful. We had, for the guided tours, we had about 160 people that came, which was the max amount that we could have for the actual guided tours because we had to put a cap on how many people we would take. And then for the open house, which was just open-ended, people could come look at different buildings on their own time. It was open from 10 o'clock in the morning to 4 p.m. on a Saturday afternoon in June. We had about 360 people show up for that. So we had really good turnout. It got a lot of press. It was quite a success. So much so that we are actually doing it again this year. We're doing it again on Saturday. So I'm kind of trying to help figure all that stuff out right as I speak. Right after this, I got to go to another meeting for the preservation tour this Saturday. And then there is also going to be another tour, the same sort of style, on July of, what's the date? It will be July 14th. So this Saturday and July 14th, we will be having the open house tours again. So.
Also just to kind of add, I mean, you're dealing with a lot of historic buildings, many of which are dormant. Has there been any activity? Have people gone through and go, I'd like to do something with this space?
Sorry about that. Yeah. So can you repeat that question? I'm sorry. I had someone knocking on my door.
Oh, sure.
And I told them to go away.
No problem. I was just wondering, since you were working on historic preservation and dormant buildings, those that have been laying vacant for a while without use, has there been interest in people coming through and going, I think I could use this space. I think we could revive it or do something with it?
Yeah. So we actually, on top of this grant and this historic preservation tours, we also went for a Night Cities Challenge grant for one of our historic buildings. It's called City Methodist Church. It's this old Gothic church. It was built in the 1920s. It was the first $1 million church in the country, actually. And it's been vacant since the 70s. And we got the grant from Knight to turn it into a ruins garden. So if anyone has been to Europe and seen some of these older castles that have turned into quote unquote ruins, and they turned them into like garden spaces or something like that, we're going to be doing that. So there are definitely these tours kind of feed it into a lot of our other projects for historic preservation downtown, because there are other groups as well that are doing similar adaptive reuse with some of our vacant blighted buildings. So
sounds good. Well, it definitely sounds that the program had done well by both communities. And I think that, for me, that's the thing that I'm always really impressed by is the creativity that we see in our state programs, be it Indiana, Michigan, or Massachusetts, is that it's, small towns, it can be urban centers like Gary, or even where I'm talking to you from right now, Detroit, that there is this creativity, there is this interest, there is a manner of basically a tool that allows communities to come forward and work that way. And Veronica, I'm not sure if there are any questions, but I guess maybe I'll leave it to you and you can close it up and just reiterate what you're doing in Indiana and how people can get in touch as we end it out.
All right. Yeah, it looks like everyone did such a good job answering questions that there are no questions from any viewers, at least not that I can see. So yeah, I guess we're going to go ahead and wrap up. If you have any questions, you should see on your screen some contact information for everyone on here. If you want to ask Alex or Shelly about their projects, about how they got them going, and if you're interested in doing something similar in your community, I highly encourage you to reach out via email if you're interested in using Creating Places and running a similar campaign in your community, or if you're in one of our other states, Michigan, Massachusetts, you're in the Chicago area, we have programs in all of those places. Please feel free to reach out to Rob or I, and we can walk you through some of those program opportunities. Even if you're somewhere completely different, still feel free to reach out and we can see if there's a way that we can support you. We love working with communities across the country. So I definitely want to hear from anyone and everyone that's been on this conference call. I just wanted to let everyone know also that there are 2 more webinars coming up that will be basically structured pretty similarly, but are going to be highlighting projects from our other states. We have one coming up on July 6th at 1 p.m. That's going to be with 2 project creators from Massachusetts. And then we have a third one on August 8th at 11 a.m. That's going to be with 3 project creators from Michigan. They're all different projects, which is what I love. I think it's going to be such a great way to kind of compare and contrast, what people are doing in these different states, kind of get up perspectives from all different types of community projects. So keep an eye out for those. I will send a follow-up email probably next week, hopefully with a recording of this webinar and then with links to those webinars, so that if you'd like to check those out as well, you can, and links to all of our program pages. But I believe that should be it. If anyone else, if no one else has anything else, yay, Michigan. Yeah, Michigan's pretty awesome. I like Indiana a little bit better, but that's just me. But yeah, so that should be it. I'm going to go ahead and close up. Thank you so much to Alex, Shelly, and Rob for jumping on this call today. I have learned so much. I love listening to these discussions. You guys are all so awesome. Alex and Shelly, you guys are champions. That was fantastic. And thank you, Rob, for leading that discussion. And I look forward to hearing you lead the next one.
Sounds good. Thank you again, everyone.
All right. Bye, everyone.